Is East St. Louis the worst place on earth? Is Illinois really one of the most corrupt states? Do most Illinois residents want to make Chicago its own state? We'll be answering these questions and more as we take a closer look at the Prairie State. So, order up a deep dish at Gino's East and grab your Cubs or Cardinals jersey as we get ready to unbox the state of Illinois. Illinois. What a beautiful state. Home to Abraham Lincoln, our finest president, this state can really be divided up into four parts. You've got snobby Chicago, a small area that can be defined as Chicago's suburbs, a section of Illinois that might as well be Wisconsin, and the rest of the state. The rest of Illinois is very large and very much looks the same. If you've ever been to Illinois, you likely only went to one of the largest cities in the US, Chicago. If, for whatever reason, you found yourself further south, you'd probably just get lost in a bunch of cornfields until you turned around and went back to Chicago. Now, since Chicago has a large part of the state's population, 17% to be exact, we'll be starting there. But don't worry though, we'll be covering all the action that takes place in the rest of Illinois too. Just try not to fall asleep when we get to that part. Let's be real though, Chicago is by far the most common reason for going to Illinois. The city brought in 58 million visitors last year. A new record. With that many people coming and going, you'll have a hard time finding any parking, as most Chicagoans will tell you, especially when it snows. Chicago is a somewhat fashionable place. In fact, you could say that of all the jean brands, Chicago is the Jordache wearing crowd.
Jordache has the look that's right. The Jordache look.
Now, you could break Chicago up into many distinct areas, which we'll summarize the best we can in 4.5 minutes, as we take a higher level view of the Windy City, not named for the gusty winds that blow off of Lake Michigan. The heart of Chicago, the Loop, is synonymous with the downtown Chicago area. Here, you'll find everything from concerts and festivals to famous art pieces like Cloudgate, which everybody just calls the Bean. You'll find most of the safest spots in Chicago from the Loop and up north. Next, we have near Northside, probably the best place to live in the city, if you can afford it. It's located just north of the beautiful Chicago River, the only river in the world that flows backwards. Here, people are wealthy and, quite frankly, could be considered yuppies. This is home to Chicago's famous Magnificent Mile and the original Gino's East of Chicago, the best pizza in Chicago, depending on who you ask. Of course, Chicago is known for its awesome food, whether it's the no ketchup ever Chicago-style hot dogs or the famous deep dish pizzas that commonly have wait times of over an hour, you'll fit right in here if you like good food. Even further up north from the Loop is another popular spot among tourists in Chicago called Wrigleyville. This is a great party spot that sees a lot of activity during Chicago Cubs home games. It's made up of lively sports bars and chill pubs that serve great wings and burgers. Today is the greatest day I've ever known. Can't wait for tomorrow. Tomorrow's much too long. That's Smashing Pumpkins, a Chicago band, a really good one. You can probably imagine what this place looked like when the Cubs won the World Series in 2016, after a brisk 108 years of being terrible, thanks to the infamous curses of the Billy Goat and the fan that has now been forgiven. Just below Wrigleyville is Lincoln Park. No, it's not named after the band. This is actually one of the better places overall to live in all of Chicago. There's a zoo, parks, and plenty of bars to visit. It's one of the safest places in Chicago too. Football fans will want to visit near Southside, which is where you'll find Soldier Field, home to the Bears. Oh, and by the way, the true thick Chicago accent is actually pretty rare, but they do exist. You're most likely to hear one when you're riding the CTA or eating at a small sports pub. Some other good places to visit or live in Chicago include North Center and Edison Park, which both have great food spots, low crime rates, and cool annual festivals to check out. Finally, we have Navy Pier. Made up of 50 acres of gardens, attractions, shops, restaurants, concert venues, and parks, Navy Pier has something for everybody. Perhaps most famously is their Ferris wheel that comes in at 150 feet high. A few of Chicago's sore spots include Austin and East and West Garfield, West Pullman, Inglewood, North Lawndale, and Avalon Park. They are criminally challenged. Of course, we can't talk about Chicago without mentioning the crime. Chicago still holds an overall crime rate that's 59% higher than the national average. The large amount of crime has created some less than desirable places to live, mostly in the western and southern parts of Chicago. The south side of Chicago is a place you don't want to go to, like ever. How Michelle Obama got out of here alive is anyone's guess. When it snows in Chicago, it snows. Being so close to Lake Michigan means lake effect snow. That means it can dump here for long stretches. One time, Lakeshore Drive was so covered in snow, people had to leave their cars. And that's most of Chicago for you. Despite the high crime rates of certain areas, it's a great city with plenty of variety in culture, food, and entertainment. For being a city of nearly 3 million, the people here are generally pretty nice. Unless you ask anyone from down south, that is. Now outside of Chicago, you have the Chicago suburbs. This is where the wealthy, rich, smart, snobby people live. Places like Buffalo Grove, Naperville, and Clarendon Hills always rank in terms of being the best places to live in the entire country. The Chicago suburbs have much more greenways, parks, and lots of places to swim and fish. There's a good sense of community here. It's very Ferris Bueller's Day Off here. You also have Aurora, which is Aurora, and Schaumburg, which is Schaumburg. Politically, the Chicago metro area is what won Hillary Clinton the state's electoral votes. In fact, in Chicago proper, Democrats cast 83% of the vote. President Trump only won 51 of Chicago's 2,000 plus precincts. The rest of the state's pretty red. As such, the further you get away from the Chicago metro area, the more you start to see real America. Outside of Rockford, a real dump, you have an area in northern Illinois that might as well be Wisconsin. This is the mom jean wearing crowd. Here, you have mostly small towns, beer drinkers, and cheese eaters. The far north end of Illinois is also where the state's mountains are. Yes, Illinois has mountains. Sort of. The highest point in the state is the 1,200-foot tall Charles Mound, a tall hill, actually. It's actually so small that Illinois' biggest mountain is actually shorter than the Sears Tower is.
Hey, what about the rest of Illinois? You haven't even talked about the big part.
Yeah, we love Illinois. It's a lot more than just Chicago.
You're right, kids. We'll get to that in a minute. Hey, where's Mappy, by the way? We haven't seen him yet.
He's busy.
Yeah, he's on his way, though.
All right. Well, looking forward to that. Well, let's talk about the rest of Illinois. This is the Wrangler and Levi's wearing crowd. This part of the state's the cornhole playing, beer drinking, deer hunting crowd, complete with real Americans, farmers, a few Amish, Bible thumpers, small country ghetto towns, and farmland everywhere in between. People from Chicago can come across as snobby, possibly just because they love their city so much. But people from the rest of Illinois can't seem to agree with Chicagoans on anything. That includes everything from politics and ideals to fashion and pizza toppings. The people in central and southern Illinois might as well be living in a different state entirely. Typically, they enjoy a life that is much more simple and slow-paced than their neighbors up north. People in Chicago think the rest of the state's backwards. People in most of the rest of Illinois dislike people in Chicago and feel Chicago uses their high property taxes for welfare payments and other big city expenses. One thing you'll notice the further south you go is that people don't cheer for the Cubs as much. There's a lot of Cardinals fans here. There's a fine line between where the Cubs-Cards line really begins and ends. It's somewhere around here. In the heart of this north-south divide is the city of Springfield, the capital of Illinois, which is where Abraham Lincoln lived for a while. There isn't a ton going on in Springfield, but there's a lot of museums and history lessons to be had, mostly centering around the 16th president. There's a couple other decent places here in the center of Illinois, like Canton and Chatham, safe places that rank really high on education. To the east is Arthur, Illinois. This is a small town of about 2,000 people. Arthur's the heart of Illinois' Amish country, with more than 1,000 Amish families driving their buggies around. There's some nice places to live scattered around the bottom half of Illinois. Places like Bloomington, Chester, LaSalle, Macomb, Effingham, and Charleston aren't too bad. But Illinois' high crime rates aren't just limited to Chicago. Places like Centralia aren't great. In Centralia, you have about a 1 in 69 chance of becoming the victim of a violent crime. Some of the worst places to live in Illinois include Metropolis, Peoria, Kankakee, Rockford, Decatur, Hoopeston, Quincy, and Danville. In D-Vegas, though, things might be looking up. That's because they decided to raise parts of Fair Oaks and hopefully send the Chicago wannabe gangsters back up north, or into some other community where they will undoubtedly take over a housing project and ruin everything there. But the worst place you could ever live in Illinois, and possibly in the entire Midwest, and maybe even the whole world, is East St. Louis. For those who are uninitiated, East St. Louis is a very bad place. Helicopters, ambulances, police, emergency rooms, shock trauma. As such, you don't ever want to go there. Ever. Let's call somebody from East St. Louis and find out how bad it really is.
Hello?
Hey, how bad is East St. Louis?
What?
How bad is East St. Louis?
I can't hear.
Oh, geez, I hope he's all right. The further south you go in Illinois, and you basically are just an extension of Kentucky. Here, you'll find all the staples of your traditional Midwestern state, such as corn, boredom, and good, hardworking people. Marion's a big city. There's a lot of shopping and dining and entertainment there. And then you have Carbondale, that's home to SIU, a pretty decent public school for small-town teens to aspire to attend. Being so far down south does mean you'll be finding a lot of hillbillies, though. Now, one stereotype of Illinois is that it's a corrupt place. Is that actually true? Yes. Chicago can make a claim to being the most corrupt city in the country, and as such, Illinois is the third most corrupt state in the nation. More reasons for Illinoisians to hate on Chicago. Come on, feel the Illinois. What about the weather? Well, it's a gray, cold sort of place for most of the year. Winters in Illinois seem to start in October, and you can still expect a freak snowstorm in May. You basically get 2 good months a year, June and October. That's really it. And you measure summer here when the local ice cream shop opens up. But all that miserable winter weather doesn't stop mushroom season from happening every spring. If you've never hunted for morel mushrooms, it's actually pretty fun. Illinois folks never tell others about their secret mushroom hunting spots, though. They've got the Sears Willis Tower. You'll wait for pizza for an hour. South Side, that's a really ratchet. For crime, it's hard to really match it. Bears fans can get a little rowdy. For months, the days are really cloudy. Okay, that's it. That's all I got. Illinois is a state with a lot of firsts. For instance, the first ice cream sundae originated in Evanston, Illinois. And Twinkies were invented on April 6, 1930 in River Forest. All things considered, Illinois isn't too bad of a state. Illinois residents may not agree on damn near anything, but you can find that famous Midwest hospitality just about everywhere in the Prairie State. And while Chicago may be a lot of fun, if you ever find yourself in Southern Illinois, just remember this. It may look like Kentucky or Missouri or even Iowa, but at least you're not in Kentucky or Missouri or Iowa, which are much worse.
Did you know Illinois is home to the pumpkin capital of the world?
There you are, Mappy. Yes, a quick check has indicated you are indeed correct, Mappy. But hey, how's it going? Where have you been this whole video? And how are you and Mrs. Mappy doing? I have so many questions for you.
Well, I haven't seen her much since she's been running around with all those other guys. I'm hoping she pops by because I have to talk to her about a couple. Mappy, I'm pregnant.
What? Wow, you're pregnant. Okay. Well, stay tuned for the next episode as we try to figure out who the father of Mrs. Mappy's baby daddy is. The end? What the hell? Hey guys, if you learned something new or you just like this video, make sure to like it. And if you really like this video, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you get all of our videos about what it's like to live in different places in America. Peace.